Hi, welcome to the Love Is podcast. I am thrilled today because I get to speak with Dave Gibbons, who I have come to admire just by looking at him on the internet and the stuff that he's been through, the stuff that he's doing. He has this new book that's come out, but he's an advisor, a speaker, he's an author, he's a pastor, he's an activist in so many ways. He's changing what church is to what church should be. I love that. And your newest book, The Shape of My Eyes, a memoir of race, faith, and finding myself. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to meet you, Kim. I've also read about your life and this what you went through, with your husband and your venture to Haiti, and then how you're trying to search to figure out what love's all about. And your quest and exploration of these things was inspiring to me. So I'm looking forward to dialoguing with you today.
Yeah, well, thanks. I really appreciate that. When I was looking at your website and looking at things, one of the things is love God, love people. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And I say that all the time. I believe that to be so true.
Mhm.
And that's our only job. It's our only job. It's what we're told to, it's really our only job. Don't judge, just love. It's really our only job. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm so with you on that. We complicate things, right? I like what I read this woman named Ilia Delia. She's a Franciscan nun, and she says that, the best way you could define God is just by one word, it's love. And then what I don't like is how sometimes Christians will say, oh, that's like weak gospel, and that's not, don't be so syrupy about God. And I said, no, actually, if you understand what love's about as he defines it, it's probably the most difficult, challenging thing to do.
Yeah. Yes. And difficult to understand, I think, too. In First John, it says that God is love, not that God loves, but that he is love. So we're
Mhm.
created in his image. So love is something we should be, not just something we do, but something we should be.
Yeah,
So figuring out what that means, right? To live love, not just to love.
yeah. And what's fascinating to me, I'm not, I'm sure you've engaged this, is when Jesus was asked, like, who should I love? It's the direction of our love. And usually when we say, love God, love our neighbor, we're thinking someone like us, right? And because we think of our Western neighborhoods. But the truth is, when Jesus was asked that, he told the Good Samaritan story. And this is what was revolutionary to me 30 years ago, because I was trying to understand the nature of like mega church. And there was a model where you attract people like you. It was an intentional modeling. And out of all the church conferences that I attended. But when I looked at the scriptures, it seemed when Jesus said that story, he was saying this is actually someone not like you, that you would even hate, culturally different than you. So when you love this one who's like this alien, someone who's this outsider to you, you're actually learning to love God because he may be like the most alien amongst us in terms of like how to understand him or engage him.
Wow. I love that because I think too often there are so many things that are translated differently, misinterpreted from what is actually written or what was written way back when in the original text and all of that. And that is definitely one of them. Love your neighbor, because you do hear people say, well, your neighbor is, who you're in fellowship with or who you are surround yourself with. And it's not true. I mean, your neighbor is everybody in the world. And I love that it's really about not the people that are like you, but the people that are unlike you. And I just think that's so true. And for some reason, we've put these categories on people, right? Like we put labels on people, and love has no labels.
Mm.
Like there are just no labels. Like, we're in a election year. And so people put the label on of what political party you are, the label on of what church you go to, the label on of belief, no belief, what your school is, whatever it happens to be, your heritage, your sexual orientation, whatever label people put on you. But those are kind of, in some ways, like political parties, it's like a club you belong to. It's not who you are. A Democrat or Republican, that's not who you are. You're Dave, I'm Kim. And it should be that simple.
No. I think you came to this, like, to me, I love how you're thinking and processing this. I believe like a lot of that probably came even as you went to Haiti, because when I saw that, you were actually loving your neighbor. You're trying to understand God's will for your life, who you are, the direction after very traumatic experience. And I think because you loved your neighbor, someone that was different than you got this clarity around what love really is like. And to me, I want to applaud you. I think there's many more Americans need to do what you've done in terms of an immersion into a different culture, because you'll see a different aspect of who God is. And so you can hear the depth of your understanding of it because I think of that experience.
Yeah, well, Haiti is an interesting place to go, but there's a lot of interesting places to go in the world. And I think what you're saying is so true. When you get outside of your neighborhood,
Hmm.
outside of yourself, and you get to know other people, you realize that people are people all over the world. And we all have the same needs. We have a lot of the same wants,
Hmm.
and we're all created in his image. We're all unique masterpieces created by God. And I think that there's this automatic love that we should have for ourselves, knowing that we are unique, that we're the only one of us ever and ever will be, and
Hmm.
how special that is that God gave you that gift, created you exactly the way he wanted you to be. And so we should automatically have this love for ourselves, which
Hmm.
doesn't always exist.
Hmm.
And in fact can be a struggle, like your childhood. How was loving yourself as a kid?
Uh, are you asking me specifically about my
Yeah,
childhood?
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think it was difficult. When I first was growing up, the first fourth up to the fourth grade year, I remember being filled with a lot of wonderment. And I lived in Maryland, in the rural hills of Maryland. And I felt like my dad called me nature boy because I would just take off my shirt and just run through the forest and jump into the swamps, play with the little animals and stuff. And I think it was like Narnia for me. But then when I moved to Arizona, I was definitely a minority there. And I was shocked, I think, by when people started calling me different names that related to my eyes. And it was a harsh reality of like, wow, people just see my eyes. So my vision went from outward exploration, curiosity, to suddenly inward and just looking at my physical traits. And so I said, wow, this is a different world. So I think my childhood went from like this innocence, wonderment, to suddenly really thinking about like, hey, am I really liked and do I belong here?
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Belonging. That's a tough one. And it amazes me always that kids, so fifth grade, you were in Arizona. Is that when you moved to Arizona?
Well, I started in fourth grade.
Fourth grade. So fourth grade, you're in Arizona. Fourth grade, you're 9, 10 years old.
Hmm.
And how sad it is that at 9 or 10 years old, you've got these things in your head that if people are different, it's bad. And as soon as you think that, it means you're better, which no one's better. So as soon as you elevate yourself, as soon as you think somebody else is bad for whatever reason, but man, 9 years old. I mean, I don't know how kids uh even I guess it comes from home. I mean, why do you think kids even begin to think that way?
Well, I think it's just you're overwhelmed by, I think, this your environment, and especially when you have people that, you know, you're playing with or you're going to school with. This is your community, and they're calling you out in a negative way. I don't know if there's a choice about it. You're just confronted with it. And so the racism, even from that early age, was difficult. I remember even seeing parents laughing with their children at me, the way I looked, and then the derision. And then when you're driving by in cars and kids seeing you, and then basically slanting their eyes at you and laughing. I think what was really difficult, I remember a moment there was this bully in our neighborhood, and he's large, and he started making fun of my mom, and that's when this went to me to another level. And I felt really protective of my mom, and because she was like my best friend. So yeah, I think it's not a choice you have to deal with as many times. I think sometimes you're just confronted with it, and you have to try to figure it out.
Yeah, right. Parents laughing at you. That's so sad. So it obviously, for those kids that were teasing you, it's something that they've learned. Because when you're 4 years old, you don't care what somebody looks like, or, you're not ever thinking that. But somewhere along the line, we learn that if people are different, that somehow makes them less or worse or bad in some way. And I watched your book trailer. I cried when I watched your book trailer. And,
Mhm.
here you're on this stingray with this banana seat. I just remember those days. And
Mhm.
sometimes we'd take playing cards and
Mhm.
clothespins and put them on our spokes, right? And make the
Yeah,
noise
yeah,
and decorate them
yeah,
for the 4th of July or whatever. It was so
yeah,
fun. But
yes.
the thing that I noticed the most, the thing that stood out for me the most in the book trailer is that you're alone.
Mm,
And
yeah,
most kids in the summer riding their bike, they're not alone. They're
right,
surrounded by friends.
right. Yeah. And that's the way it feels, because even though there may be people around you, you feel like you're not like them, and they don't get my life, and they don't see you like in front of the mirror like that, just looking at your body and ashamed of your body, or ashamed of your physical characteristics. And I think that's probably the disease. I think Mother Teresa talks about that. Mother Teresa saying that aloneness is the disease of the 20th century. And I think it is. It's, the thing that the Bible, I remember in the creation stories, that, God said the only thing that's not good after creation was that man was not is alone.
Mm,
And so that's why he created a partner. And, I've been working with recovery people a lot the last couple years, and I've been studying about addiction. And they said the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's actually connection.
mm,
And so I said, oh yeah, that's right. We have this longing to not be alone, to be in a meaningful relationship.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so true. Yeah, the traumas of childhood, man, you had more than your share, um, and then are so vulnerable to talk about it and write about it, and not just that, but do something about it. Like even in your church, it's not about a whole bunch of people that look like you. It's about diversity. And I know other pastors that have tried to create diversity in their church and by hiring somebody on their staff, or
Mhm.
whatever, and it doesn't work. What should people be doing, or what is the secret sauce? I don't even know what to say, but how do you create this atmosphere that allows for, welcomes, encourages diversity?
Well, I think number one, you have to value it. So do you really value it? And do you see it's from the heart of God? And because I think it's hard to move forward without a clear mindset. And then secondly is, you need to practically ask yourself, if I really believe this is important for my life, what does it look like in my schedule? How much time will I devote towards this? Where will I slot this? Because otherwise it just becomes an abstraction or a good feeling. It's an insight. And like my friend said, insights can become illusions to transformation. Just because you have an insight, oh, I need to do this, doesn't mean you're changed, but you have this physical feeling that I've changed. So we think we changed, but there's nothing that was actually done. And so for me, when I recognized this, I realized I had a lot of Black friends and brown friends growing up. And I said, I'm mostly at that time, 20 years ago here at New Song, it was mostly Asian Americans, which is very diverse by itself because we're not a monolith. But as I was looking at my life, I said, I've not been around my Black brothers and sisters enough, or my brown brothers and sisters. So I literally said, okay, I'm going to start with 10% of my time and allocate to start hanging out with my my Black brothers and sisters, just to spend time listening to them, seeing what's up, and befriending them again, not to impose anything on them. So I think there needs to be a practical application if you're really serious about it. Well, how much time will you devote this coming week and in the coming days? And then thirdly, I would say it's important your positioning. Your positioning or posture should be one of listening, learning, loving, coming alongside of. Because I think that's been our problem. We're not very good listeners and learners. We just think, oh, this is what you should do, and try to solve a person's problems when we have no idea what they're going through. Yeah, so those are some practical things. When it comes to institutions and organizations, I think it is important to not just hire someone on staff that's of a different color, because sometimes the color, it's significant for sure, but it doesn't mean they're culturally different than you. So I'd say you want to look at not only maybe color of skin, I said, but also look at their culture. Is it someone who's really diverse and of a different mindset? Maybe how they view some of even the social challenges that Christians are looking at today. Are you open to hearing someone that may be considered like a liberal to you, or progressive? Because we use all these terms. So I would say, for an institution, they have to embrace a person not just on color of skin, which is significant, but also their culture. And then when you engage, you have to put them in positions of authority. As you trust them and know them, put them not just like on a focus group, but you want to actually have them around positions where they can administer leadership. And so the boards, like that to me is really a good sign of a church or an institution serious, is have you provided board seats for women of color or women or people of a different culture than you? If you haven't, then you're not really serious about it because they're not really changing the direction of a company.
Mm.
Those are
Yeah.
some initial thoughts.
Yeah, I get, which I really like. I like the idea of being proactive about it and not just waiting around. I mean, people tend to live in neighborhoods or even working companies or whatever, that if you're always sort of in the same circle of people that are like you and not making an effort to reach out to people that aren't. And I love what you say about listening, because I took First Corinthians 13, right? And I took
Mhm.
one word or verse at a time to figure out what is love, right? So what is love that is patient?
Mm,
And the thing, if I would have stopped after that month, I would have changed my life right then and there. Because what I figured out about love that is patient is that we're supposed to love everybody, like we've already said. But love that is patient isn't just patience, isn't just not getting mad because you can't find your kid's shoes, or whatever. But it is recognizing that this moment right here, right now, is the most important moment of your life. What's in the past is in the past. What's in the future is yet to come. This is the most important moment of your life. And so if you recognize that, then you're fully there. You're fully engaged. You are listening like you've never listened before. And I'll tell you, Dave, I stunk at this. I was
mm,
horrible. Like I would be in conversation, think about who has to get to soccer practice, what I'm making for dinner, how much laundry I've got piled up, whatever,
yeah.
and not really be listening, but thought that I was. But
Mm,
when I began to practice this, and it took a lot of practice, I have to say, but when I began to practice this, it changed everything. I heard things I never would have heard.
yeah.
I heard it a whole different way. And I stopped making assumptions
Mm,
about what I thought somebody was going to say based on what I knew about them, but actually listened. And another thing I figured out or found out that I changed me was I started listening a whole lot more than I was talking.
wow.
And yeah, and so if you want to show love, I mean, that's love, right? To
Mhm.
really give somebody your time, whoever, the person at the grocery store or your best friend, your spouse, whoever it happens to be, but to be fully there for them is love, is showing love.
Wow. It's pretty deep. And it's really profound how you that how you changed and shifted your whole positioning. What do you think caused you to get to that place where you could see this and that you need to change and position yourself this way? What was catalytic for that?
Well, it's interesting because every month for me was such a journey, and every month, every single month,
Hmm.
I thought I would know it. I thought it'd be easy. It never was. And it
Hmm.
took until the end of the month for God to hit me over the head with something.
Hmm.
Like, all of a sudden I'm sleeping outside with rattlesnakes and tarantulas and I go, "Oh, now I get it," or whatever. Like something would happen. And there was something that happened that month that I saw somebody actually living love that is patient.
Hmm.
And I never looked for that before. And
Hmm.
after spending a month of really looking for what is it, what is it, what is it, I think I know what patience is, but love that is patient is so different.
Hmm.
And so when I saw somebody, when I recognized that that's what somebody was doing, because I think we know that, right? We know if somebody's really engaged with us
Hmm.
or if their mind is wandering,
Hmm.
if they're bored by our conversation,
Hmm.
if we're
Hmm.
wasting our breath, right? And
Yeah.
you don't feel real loved in those moments. And so I love what you said about listening. It's just so true. It's such a gift. It's a gift that you give to somebody else, but it's also a gift to be the listener, to
Yeah.
be on the other end and somebody's taking time to talk to you and
Exactly.
share from their heart like that. That's a gift.
It's so
So, to
true.
throw it away, to waste it in any moment in time is foolish.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Man, so powerful. It's funny that you're talking and I'm talking to you today, and it's all about love, right? And then what does love look like? And this listening piece, there's a verse, I remember it said, pray without ceasing. And I never understood that because I couldn't imagine me talking to God the whole time, all day. That because I'm an introvert, that would be exhausting to do that. And then so I remember committing to prayer when I was younger at youth retreats, hey, you need to pray every day, 30 minutes or an hour. And I'd get into it and I'd look at my watch. Oh no, it's only 10 minutes. And I said, how am I going to talk for 60 minutes, ask God for stuff or whatever? And then I realized, like you, it's like, most of that prayer is probably listening to God. And then it's maybe not just through the hearing of things. Maybe it's by seeing God's voice, because he speaks to us through nature or um, through visions and dreams, he said, or through people. People tend to be the greatest portals, I think, of God's revelation at times. C.S. Lewis, the great author, said that you probably are never closer to God than when you're next to a human being. And and I that's a beautiful thing to me. The Imago Dei. I don't know if people feel that way. I don't think they'd be as angry at people or as disrespectful if they realize that no, this person's made in his image, not in physical form. It's not talking about a physical representation of God's image, but in his character and the fruit of his spirit, love, joy, peace. These are all embodied within your Imago Dei. And then if you connect with a person deeply, then you're learning to connect with God. And maybe that's what he means when he says, love God, love your neighbor, but he says, you love the least of these, you've done it unto me.
Mm.
And so, yeah, so I really appreciate your positioning of how you engage that. Yeah, maybe it's more about listening than preaching at somebody or declaring something to them.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about, and I love that C.S. Lewis quote too, that you're never closer to God than when you're with somebody.
Mm.
And I think that's so true. And you do hear God through so many different avenues and
Mhm.
see God through so many different avenues. And one thing that I pray is that I see people the way Jesus does. And
Mm.
I think Jesus sees the heart, right? Rather than the exterior, rather than our flaws, our shortcomings, our achievements, our greatness, our lousiness, whatever it is, he looks at our heart. And another thing is that I think plays into this so well is that we control the narrative.
Mhm.
And I think so often we forget that. And I learned that when I was working on Love Keeps No Record of Wrongs.
Mm,
You've had to work through forgiveness and deal with a lot of pain and stuff in your life. And what I figured out about Love That Keeps No Record of Wrongs is that, yeah, we don't forget the things that happened to us, and we might forgive, but we don't forget. But
mhm,
the narrative is on us. We
mm,
can change the narrative. So like two guys can be in the same traffic jam, and one honking on the horn and his blood pressure's rising and he's mad and angry. And the guy right next to him is like, I'm in a traffic jam. I'm going to turn on a podcast. I'm going to just relax. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. So
mhm.
the same situation, but shifted narratives, and that we shouldn't let other people control our narrative, right? It should be our own. So did that play a role for you in forgiveness, or in looking back at people that have hurt you? And did you need to shift your narrative, or how did forgiveness happen for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure what religious type of background you have, but I grew up in a very Christian fundamentalist environment. They would use these adjectives when they would describe the church. They would say we're an independent, militant, fundamentalist Baptist. And so it was an era in America where a lot of Christians felt they had to fight against what they thought was like a rising liberalism, because the views of women, sexuality, race, the church was being challenged, and even the Bible to them. So the very fundamentals they felt of their Christian faith were being attacked. And so you could see the response of evangelicalism. So they had this response to separate themselves from the world. So anybody that's not really with them is against them. And that's why I can see a lot of this is really like today, if you look at the political environment, it seems like the roots of this were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s of where Christian nationalism started to arise. And so I was trained like if someone doesn't agree with you, especially when it comes to religiously, they're almost like your enemy. And then you counsel them basically, well, they're going to hell. I mean, we gave them a chance and there we go. And then you just move on to your next victim, to preach the gospel, so to say. And so yeah, I was taught to separate from people that didn't believe like me. They actually had a theology called the doctrine of secondary separation. It was like so let's say you're a liberal and you're not supposed to be a liberal, and I'm a conservative. But my friend also who knows you still is friends with you. They said, not only should I separate from you, I should separate from our friend. So
Oh,
it's a second degree of separation. And they would try to biblically prove these things, because there are some verses that talk about separation, but it's not with this type of spirit or, culturally too, things have shifted. But yeah, so I think I worked through it I don't think I could have initiated it unless there was some type of divine intervention in my life because I was so set, not because of the theological aspect, because I thought that was skewed in terms of the logic of that. But I think as a human, I had struggles when my dad had an affair and just to engage him again. I didn't trust him. I didn't want anything to do with him or his new wife that he had an affair with because I saw the devastation and havoc it had upon my mom and our family. And so he was no someone I couldn't trust, even though we had such a great relationship and he was a great dad to that point. It seemed like everything went out the window emotionally for me. I just had a tough time. And so I don't think it could have happened where I initiated a relationship again until I felt there was this moment. I literally felt like God was speaking to me. And I don't have these moments a lot where I felt his voice when I was younger, but I felt I heard his voice and I heard, you need to forgive your dad while I was walking across a field. And it was just random. And I said, I responded real quickly. I said, well, I have no feelings for him. It wouldn't be authentic. It's impossible. And he goes, well, do you think my son felt like going to the cross? And that just knocked me over. And then I had an epiphany. I said, it's not about my feelings with this one. It's about doing what is right and what would be like godlike. And And so I remember calling my dad right away, and he was shocked hearing me on the phone. I was in South Carolina. He was in Arizona. He said, he was like, "Hi, Dave," and I said, "Hey, listen, I know this is weird. I'm calling you out of the blue, but I think I need to meet with you and your wife when I come home for Christmas." And he goes, "Okay." And then when I met him, I think he was ready for me just to let out all my angst. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I need to apologize. I haven't been a very good son. So please forgive me for ignoring you and for not engaging you." And then I looked at his wife, who I couldn't stand at that time, and I said, I want to apologize to you too. I haven't been very kind, and I'm sorry. Please forgive me." And my dad started weeping, and he said, "Hey, would you forgive me too?" I wasn't expecting that. I went with the understanding that he may not say anything, but I felt I need to do my thing. And I would, want people to know that I didn't have feelings for my dad at that point. Even in that moment, I was just trying to do what I knew was right. And I asked God to keep on. I said, I don't have the feelings that's going to draw me closer to my dad again. So I kept praying for it even after that. But I started praying a prayer. I said, "God, help me to see my dad maybe as you see him, because I think if I see my dad like you see him, it's going to help me to move to deeper forgiveness and deeper love." And there was a moment I started seeing my father like a child, like and like a child, because he lost his dad when he was like 2 years of age. And then it was affirmed, this idea, when I talked to a counselor of my uh, that I worked with, and he said, "What's your dad's first name?" I said, "His name is Gary." And as soon as I said it, I go, "Dang, he's just a human. He's just Gary." And so all the dad stuff started to melt away because I had this high, they're perfect, they're superheroes. Then suddenly I said, "He's broken just like I am." And then it took about 5 years, but I started having feelings for my dad again after just repeated. I forced myself to meet with him or talk to him like once a month. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Man, that is holy cow. It, walking in obedience is part of it, right? Like
Yeah.
hearing God say to you, you got to do this, and then walking it out and doing it. That could not have been an easy thing. Like I imagine the drive over wasn't the best drive of your life. Like thinking about what could possibly happen, what could be said, what are you supposed to say, what are you supposed to do, and how you're going to be received, and all of that. But you put it all aside, and you did it anyway. And there's so much of that in life that if we just put it aside and do it anyway. Do what you know is the right thing to do. No matter what. And man, I admire that. That was not an easy moment.
Mhm.
I am so sad, Dave, because our time is up, and I have so enjoyed talking to you and would love to talk to you for 105 more hours if we could. But so I want people though to know, where can they get your latest book? What is it that you want people to do after listening to this?
Well, maybe just first just offer a prayer. Say, "God, help me to experience your love." Instead of thinking you have to love, maybe you need to experience his love, and just invite him to let him love you. Because I think that changes everything. And then, yeah, and then, if my book's more about, to me, I wrote it to people searching for home. I think there's this longing to find a place where you're loved and love, and you're known and you know. And I think that was my life. Like after I got rocked in fourth grade, suddenly my Narnia became like a very harsh world. I think it was like searching for that kid again, running through the forest, like that place of wonderment. So I think that's been my pursuit all my life now. So I think there's a lot of people trying to figure it out. Like, is there really is really this heaven real? Is this Narnia real? Is this story really true? And I want to tell people, yeah, it's really true. It may not be the way you want to see it, but if you work at it and experience the love of God, He can give you a different perspective of the world. And even as you look at yourself in the mirror. And so, yeah, so I said, yeah, if you need a book that would help you maybe to transport you into a place of home, I think this may help you process that. Because I wanted it to bring hope and healing to people. And that's why I shared in a very raw way some of my doubts, some of my most painful stories, so people could process it themselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing it. And I know that it's going to help a whole lot of people and change the way people see themselves and see the world and see God. So pretty great stuff. Thank you for everything that you do. I, you're just, uh, you're resilient. You're an overcomer. You obviously love deeply. You obviously love like God wants you to love and pursue that and want more of that and bring it into everything that you do in life. And so just thank you for being you and for helping people, even when you don't know you're helping them. I know there's lots of people that have been blessed by you, helped by you. And I just so appreciate that about you. And I so appreciate the time that you've taken today.
Yeah, I know we got to close, but I feel this is from like God because I literally before I talked to you, I saw that this podcast is called Love Is, and then I read some about your bio, and then I was reading my friend's post that he posted today from Paris, the city of love. So everything's around love today for me. Like it started off with love, so it's pretty cool. And then he posted something his wife wrote. And she's a dear friend. I call her the poet of our community in Paris. And they're also like they were missionaries in Thailand. They're going back to Thailand, I believe. And she wrote this paraphrase of 1 Corinthians 13. And I like to close with you
Yeah.
because I think it's perfect for you and for who you are too. But she paraphrased in her own words, and she says, "Love rolls up its sleeves, pulls up its socks, and keeps trying and finding new ways when the old ways don't work. Love doesn't ask, 'What about me?' Love is more excited than you are when you get bumped up to first class, or when there's a long-awaited baby on the way, or when you lose 10 pounds. Love will want to know the whole story. Love is the fangirl, cheering the loudest, applauding long after the encore, and even after the curtain drops. Love overrides the ego. Love doesn't roll its eyes, ever. Arrogance will chase it, but love runs faster. Love understands that having an advantage is like wedding cake. If you eat it all alone, it's not wedding cake. It's just cake, and you'll get sick. It's not for lording, not for hoarding. Love makes room for different opinions and preferences. Love doesn't push to the front of the line unless it's to rush and open the door, to be first to pour the water, to fill the butter dish, to be the first to say sorry. Love protects from emotional collateral damage instead of causing it. Love is really bad at math when it comes to keeping score. And sometimes you'll win even though you're clearly losing. Love will ugly cry with you and would rather help you wash the mascara off your face than let you wear the cone of shame. Love doesn't lecture the prodigal after they return. Gossip is never juicy. Love is ready to find a new perspective and even change their mind when they are wrong. Even after a bad night's sleep and before the first cup of coffee, love won't keep criticizing, but will choose to be respectful and adjust expectation. Love knows that in the end, goodness wins the day. Patricia DeWitt.
Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that. That is so good.
I
That
know she's
is
such a great
so,
writer.
so good. Holy cow. Yeah, I want to read that again and again. I'm going to have to get a copy of that because, man, she hit the nail on the head. Like that is just so good and so inspired. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
I'll send that to you. I have your email address.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, thanks again for being here, and hopefully we'll talk again sometime.
Thanks, Kim. Good
Okay,
talking to
great.
you.
And until next episode, be blessed.